So as you probably know, Ogdoadics single-handedly saved the reptile type in Yu-Gi-Oh! Sure, the aliens followed by the reptilians did help as well, but it's still the Ogdoadics who are doing the heavy lifting. I mean, they have graveyard effects, in the monster type that can use Snake Rain. Not to mention the fact that they actually do stuff like, special summoning themselves. It's just small things that matter. But with the release of Ogdoadics, the reptile community, which I'm going to pretend is a thing, was divided into two main groups. The Chaos Ogdoadic faction, who wanted to play them as a sort of mishmash deck that tries to dump as many cards into the graveyard for you to later banish, and then the Bish Balkan group, who instead focused on one fragile but utterly ridiculous combo, which you really need to see. Seriously, if you haven't seen it yet, the Bish Balkan combo lets you search 5 and then draw 5, before setting up a complete monster effect lock. So far, I've been on Team Bish Balkan. Thanks to stuff like the aliens for giving them a real end board, and then later the reptilians for letting them synchro summon more easily, as well as actually giving them backup plays, it was much more fun of a deck than just trying to play worse light spawns. Despite the deck's flaws, such as being weak to most hand traps and losing to Raigeki, it was such a fun, ridiculous combo that I couldn't help but gravitate towards it. And then Battle of Chaos releases, bringing with it two tools that make the Chaos version so much better. I couldn't help but give it a go, and my god does it deliver. Those two cards are Ogdoadic Serpent Strike and, funnily enough, the Zombie Vampire. Now, before I go too deep into that, for those who still want to play the Bish Balkan version of the deck and want to know how these cards fit into it, you can safely run 3 Serpent Strike instead of some of the lesser stuff, because it's just that good. I'll probably put an updated version of my Alien Reptilianne Ogdoadic deck in my Patreon, if you want to see that. But back to the subject at hand, we finally got the Ogdoadic support that we were owed in a main set, and it actually really helps. Ogdoadic Serpent Strike does two things. First of all, it discards a monster, or sends it from the field to the graveyard in order to special summon one with a different attribute, specifically a reptile of course. You may be thinking that a 2-for-1 like this isn't a great trade, but actually you really want to be able to get certain cards out of your hand easily, and this is great for that. Having something like an Overlord or a King stuck in your hand used to be really bad, and you'd have to draw Snake Rain or make the Alien Link to be able to discard it. Now you can not only easily discard it, but also get a special summon in the process. Usually you'll get a light for a dark, or vice versa, but thanks to the TCG for finally making a decent TCG exclusive, we have a Night Sword Serpent who's a water attribute, giving you a lot more freedom with your summons. As for sending from the field, that usually won't come up, but sometimes you might realise that you summoned a Nunu from the graveyard and you need it off the field to stop it from locking you into extra deck reptile monsters. It's not the best use of this card, but it's a nice option to have. The special summon having basically no restrictions other than the attribute finally makes the high level Ogdoadics easy to summon. Nobody is really going to tribute 3 to get an Overlord on the field, even if you do run Lair of Darkness, but with this it's basically free. All you need to do is get it into the graveyard. Which brings us to the second effect. During either player's main phase, as long as your opponent sends any monster to their graveyard, you get to Foolish Berry any reptile. It's obviously a given that that's going to happen at some point during their turn, since basically any combo is going to make that happen. But then there's also stuff like, well, most hand traps. Your opponent needs to discard them to use them, so you'll immediately be rewarded with a Foolish Burial effect, which, if used on something like a Night Sword Serpent, is an immediate special summon. That, or you can just send any Ogdoadic that will be able to get your combos going. Just as a reminder, unless you have 5 reptiles with different names in your graveyard, sending a reptile is the entire effect of Water Lily, while this just does that as a bonus. Sounds good, right? But what if I told you that you can trigger this effect on demand? Enter now the second new piece of support, the Zombie Vampire. Despite the kinda cringe name, it's actually amazing support for the deck. Here's what it does. First off, it has a summoning condition that will never actually come up, so let's ignore that. And secondly, it has protection that makes it impossible to target with monsters unless they were summoned from the graveyard. It's not the best protection, but at least it dodges... Okay, basically nothing relevant. Let's ignore that too and move on to the third effect, the one that we actually care about. By detaching a material, you get to mill 4 from the top of both decks, and then special summon a monster that just got milled. So I know what you're thinking, getting materials into your opponent's graveyard is a bit risky. And it's true, but since you can steal one immediately, you can avoid some of the worst repercussions by getting it onto your field. And the upsides are massive. First of all, you just milled 4, so you've filled your graveyard up with light and darks. Your combos will be way stronger from that point onwards, so it's well worth it. Secondly, it triggers Serpent Strike for you, as long as your opponent is running monsters. So that'll proc against pretty much anything except maybe Sky Strikers and Frogs. So it's a foolish burial of any reptile from a continuous spell that'll probably trigger again on your opponent's turn. And then finally, well, you've also gotten a material out of it, letting you either bring out a big Ogdoadic like Overlord, or a level 4 to use as Xyz material. That's a lot off of one monster, and afterwards you're still left with a 3000 attack monster with slight protection. So what's the new playstyle for this deck? Well, you'll usually be going into the zombie vampire by first making a Chaos Ruler. This card is a level 8 synchro that mills 5, and allows you to keep a light or a dark monster you just milled to your hand. Just like the vampire, filling up your graveyard is amazing for this deck, but it doesn't end here. If this synchro monster ends up in the graveyard, you can banish a light and a dark to summon it straight back again, but it'll then be banished when it leaves the field. This is actually fine. Tribute it for Curse or Alert, giving you a level 8, and then banish 2 cards to bring it back, overlay it into the zombie vampire, and then detach it, meaning it won't actually get banished so you can bring it back again next turn. Through this line of play, you'll have milled 9 cards from your deck, setting up with a ton of rank 4 or 8 plays, some more foolish burials, and even some searches. And so what do you do once you've built this board full of huge monsters? Normal summon Alistair. Let's look at the deck. So here's the deck. Being a Chaos deck, a few of the ratios are fairly flexible, since you'll be discarding or milling a bunch of it anyway, so feel free to make some little changes if it suits you. There's a few cards in particular that I'll suggest alternatives to, so stick around for those. Let's start this Ogdoadic deck off with the Ogdoadics themselves. Run 3 Naya and 3 Nunu since those are the best monsters. In this deck, you don't really need your normal summon, hence the Alistair, so these two are great for starting your combos. They can both discard themselves to send a reptile of the opposite attribute to the graveyard, so that gives you a light and a dark right there. What's more, Nunu can summon itself back, so it's a great material for your level 8 tribute monsters, or to make a King of the Feral Imps. Since it locks you out of summoning extra deck monsters that aren't reptiles, it's not quite as good in this version of the deck as in the Bishbalkin version, but it still comes up, especially just for its good discard effect. Noya, however, is basically your priority, since Flood is such a good card in Chaos Ogdoadic. Your usual play would be to get something in the graveyard along with Curse, and then tribute something with Curse in order to bring both of them back. It's nice to finally have 2 spells in this deck, so you can always just search whichever spell card you didn't start with in your hand, instead of just getting a backup Water Lily for later turns. The one Zoho is less essential in this deck, but it's a good way of getting something out of your hand that you need more in your graveyard. Then for the high levels, you run 1 Curse, 1 Alert, 1 King, and 1 Overlord. Curse is a great card, and you can dodge its downside if you use it before the Vampire's Mills if you're going first. You'll usually use it on Noya, so they can then search a spell, but using it for the materials alone is also good. Alert is an easy level 8 monster that tributes something like a Strenna or a Chaos Ruler, ending up with an overall plus card advantage, but you can also put a monster who is banished a bit prematurely back into your graveyard. Aron is then my 2 tribute monster of choice instead of Amnesia, but you can run both if you feel like it. The Ogdoadic King just works better in this deck since it hand rips your opponent like Levianeer, and also searches something to fuel discards like Brator and Macabre. Finally, Overlord is just a strong card that's easy to summon, and can help menace your opponent into not committing too much, or helping you even out the field if your board gets wiped. As for Reptilians, we got rid of all of them except Coatl. We also had to get rid of the aliens too, by the way. They're all fun, but this ended up more consistent in the end, so sadly they needed to go. Coatl, however, is just a free level 4 tuner that can special summon itself and is easy to search, so it just had to stay. Getting to this early and then making a Chaos Ruler is a staple combo in this deck, so you'll really want this card ASAP. Finally, to round out the reptiles, Nightsword Serpent is amazing in this deck. It gets your play started immediately with Snake Rain, but it's also just a great thing to mill off of your extra deck monster effects. You can run 3 if you want, I just wanted to keep the deck at 40 cards, and starting with discarding your hand is a lot less good than milling it. So now for the Chaos cards. There's a lot of one-ofs, but if one day the small Chaos Dragons come back to more than just 1 per deck, use more of them if possible. Levianeer and the Chaos Creator are both level 8s that are easy to summon and do various cool things, but you'll mostly be making them for your rank 8 plays. Levianeer can easily be searched off of Votor, who in turn can easily be summoned off of Spheres. So that's a nice recovery play for turn 3. The small Chaos Dragons will first make a Striker Dragon and then a Spheres was the second one, but since you won't be playing Boot Sector Launch, you could also replace Striker Dragon with an LP if you wanted. You'll just get a slightly weaker Borreload Savage Dragon if you do that. Finally, we run 3 Alistairs. He's the best normal summon in the game, so obviously he's also the best normal summon in this deck. Being a level 4, you can then just Synchro or Xyz summon him away, so you'll get a lot of value out of him in this deck. Also, since he's dark, you can actually excavate him off of Chaos Ruler, so you actually have even more chances of getting him into your hand. As for our spells, we basically max out on the good ones and then run 1 Invocation. We've talked about how good Serpent Strike is, but Water Lily is still an amazing card and it can be a good way to get a tuner onto the field later on. Snake Rain is as broken as ever, and this deck really does make good use of it. Chaos Space basically results in a free Spheres and a draw, plus if it gets milled, you can still use its graveyard effect by banishing the small Chaos Dragons with other cards' effects. Meltdown is just more Alistairs. Finally, if you think just 1 Invocation is a bit too risky, just run a second copy. You'll just normal summon Alistair straight away usually though, so there's not too much of a chance of it being milled. Now for the extra deck. You can really do a lot with a toolbox like this, so there are of course other options that you can consider as well. So again, put in any other rank 4 or 8 monsters or level 8 synchros of your choice. Since we're running Alistair with light and darks, run a Macabre and a Caliga. 2 Macabre is also fine though, since it is usually the better choice. For synchros, Chaos Ruler is your most important summon, milling 5 and adding 1 to the hand, and then being another level 8 material by summoning itself back after being tributed or used for the zombie vampire. Borreload Savage Dragon comes up less, but you can make it after making a Spheres and then equip the Striker Dragon for a negate. For our rank 8s we run 4 of them. The Zombie Vampire, Zombie Stein, Hope Harbinger and Dingirsi. We've gone over the Zombie Vampire's uses, so we know how good that is in the deck for getting the mills and triggering Flood. Zombie Stein is a fairly powerful negate, but it also has 4000 attack. Just don't forget that it needs 2 darks. Hope Harbinger is a spell negate that helps protect your other monsters and combos fairly well with Zombie Stein's 4000 attack, and then Dingirsu is protection on top of being non-targeting removal. For our rank 4s, we run a King of the Feral Imps, Abyss Dweller, and Strenna. Feral Imp searches whatever you want and is one of your few options for getting Nunu off of the field. Abyss Dweller is a good card, but funnily enough can even get the attack boost thanks to Nightsword Serpent being a water attribute. Strenna is great since it's an easy to make rank 4 that, when tributed, becomes a Hyperiton, giving you an easy monster negate that's also usually a spell negate most of the time. And it also helps keep the costs of your tributes down since it replaces itself immediately. Finally, for your links, you run a Spheres and then a Striker Dragon to help you go into it. The last spot is fairly flexible, but I put in an Artemis just to help you make a Macabre even if you're really unlucky with your hand. A second Chaos Ruler is also a fair choice though, as well as a second Macabre if you do decide to keep a Caliga. You could also run any of the other reptile links like Echidna or M-Frame, but I just didn't find them actually very useful in this version of the deck. Now for your options, besides a few extras like I mentioned already like the Amnesia, you can also run Chaos Nephthys. It comes out in the same set as the new Ogdoadic card and it has a fun powerful effect, but you don't really destroy things very often with this deck so you won't really be triggering it yourself. Also, if you want to steal something you've milled from your opponent, Vampire Fascinator is something you can make out of your zombie vampire whose effect you've already used. It's just that there's nothing too good to go into afterwards since it does lock you into zombies. Maybe some kind of fun play with IP Masquerena and Underworld Goddess could work, but it's probably just not worth it. Anyway, I've talked enough about this deck, now it's time to show it in action. Right, so now I'll be showing some test hands with this deck. But first, if you've been enjoying the video so far, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Also check out the Patreon to download the deck for yourself. For this first hand, let's start by discarding a Zohar with the Snake Rain. To get an Alet, a Nunu, a Noya, and a Nightsword Serpent into the graveyard. That will trigger Nightsword Serpent to summon itself, before Zohar discards the Curse to add itself to the hand. With Curse in the graveyard, it can tribute Nightsword Serpent to summon itself back and a Noya. It'll search a Serpent Strike. Play Strike before summoning Coatl with its own effect. You can then make a Chaos Ruler, mills 5, keeping the Alistair that we hit. Since we have Strike, we can now overlay into the Zombie Vampire and mill another 4. That lets us summon a Coatl, and send a King thanks to Strike. Normal summon Alistair to get an Invoked, before overlaying into a Strenna that you can tribute for an alert. That lets you return 2 banished monsters to the graveyard, gives you a level 8 material, and lets you summon a Hyperiton. Chaos Ruler banishes 2 to summon itself back, and a milled Chaos Base now draws you a card, which is another Snake Rain. Nunu can summon itself back, so you tribute it and the Vampire for a King. We can now overlay into a Hope Harbinger, and then get Invocation for a Macabre. To give Hyperiton a spell negate, we can just use Snake Rain so that it can add another spell from the graveyard. Alistair adds itself back, before you finally use Strike's effect to discard a Coatl to summon Overlord from your graveyard. You now have Macabre's Monster Negate and Banish, Hope Harbinger's Spell Negate, Hyperiton's Spell and Monster Negate, and then Overlord's Board Wipe in an emergency. Aaron will also get to hand rip your opponent, as well as searching something during your opponent's turn, and Strike is still on the field for another Foolish Burial effect. This time, we start with a Meltdown, which will give you an Alistair straight from the start. Noya sends a Curse, and then Strike sends King to summon back a Noya, who can then search a Lily. Banish King with Collapse Serpent to make a Striker Dragon, and then repeat for a Wyverbuster into a Spheres. Normal Alistair for his search, before using Water Lily on a Nightsword Serpent for more materials, with which you make a King of the Feral Imps. That will search a Coatl, who can immediately summon herself. She and Alistair make a Chaos Ruler, and then Curse tributes the Imp to bring back Noya. Nunu sends Alert, and then the level 8s make a Vampire, who mills 4 to get a level 4 material on the field, all while triggering Strike to send an Overlord. Chaos Space gives you the draw of another Chaos Space. Summon Nunu to tribute it with Alert, who puts back King into your graveyard. You can now make a Strenna to tribute alongside Vampire for a King, giving you a Hyperiton. Chaos Ruler revives himself, and you use it to make a Hope Harbinger along with Alert. Invocation summons a Macabre, who will now have both a spell and a monster negate. For this third hand, we use Snake Rain to discard an Overlord, sending a Nightsword, Curse, Alert, and Nunu. Nightsword summons itself, and then Noya sends a King, before Curse revives it and allows it to search a Water Lily, since we need access to a tuner right now. Play a Lily for 3 Coatl, with which you then make a Chaos Ruler and mill 5, keeping a Chaos Creator. That will summon itself by banishing a Light and a Dark, but then shuffling back 2 banished monsters and summoning your Overlord. Alert tributes Chaos Ruler, and then you can summon a Coatl. You can then mill again with Vampire, getting an Alistair to overlay into a Strenna. Revive Chaos Ruler to make a Hope Harbinger, and then summon your Collapse Serpent, going through the combo to get a Spheres and a draw from Chaos Space. Tribute Vampire and Strenna for a King and a Hyperiton. Now, on top of the spell and monster negate, we also have Spheres this time, for its non-targeting return to a hand that will then summon a Praetor, and search a Chaos Dragon Levianeer for follow-up plays next turn. Want to see an even better one? Well, in this hand we have a lot of chaos stuff, but Nunu's going to be enough to get the snake part of the deck going. Meltdown searches an Alistair, which you might as well summon now for Invocation. Chaos Space can discard Praetor since we probably won't use it, and then you can start doing the climb up into spheres, getting a draw along the way, as well as an extra monster in the hand. Since the card we drew was a Serpent Strike, we can now play it and then use Nunu's effect to send a Coatl. We then just summon her back with Strike, discarding the used up Wyver Buster. She lets you make a Chaos Ruler, milling and adding a Nunu while triggering the Nightsword Serpent special summon. Curse tributes Chaos Ruler to get another level 4 first Trenner, and then you can revive the Chaos Ruler to mill again with Vampire. These mills get you an Overlord, and let you send Alert with Serpent Strike. That would tribute Strenna for Hyperiton, before you summon a Chaos Creator to make a Hope Harbinger. Now just make a Macabre, adding a spell to Hyperiton along the way. So, what did you think? Are you going to remain true to the Bish-Balkan version of the build, or will you try out this new one? Tell me what you think in the comments below, and while you're there, make sure to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Special thanks to the first tier 2 patron, Jason Murat. If you want to check out the patron, the link's in the description. Thanks for watching!